Welcome to Jitasa University, where our goal is to empower nonprofits through free educational content. These short videos are all provided by trusted partners within our network as well, so each topic will be relevant to every organization, regardless of size. Let's dive right in. This month, we're featuring Sean, founder of Nonprofit CFOs, who helps small and mid-sized nonprofits with interim staffing, fractional CFO services, and more. Let's pass things over to Sean and get started with the content.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in so that you can serve your nonprofits and your mission better. And executive directors, I want you to know that financial literacy is a must-have leadership skill. You don't have to be a CPA or a math whiz to lead confidently in this area. I'm Sean Hale. I've been in the nonprofit sector since I was a kid. My first nonprofit job was working as a custodian in the nonprofit daycare that my mom ran. And as an adult, I've been in the nonprofit sector since 1999. In 2020, I set up a consulting shop. We work with a bunch of great nonprofits around the country doing a fractional CFO and a variety of other services that are related to finances and accounting and those sorts of things. And just have a quick legal disclaimer for you. Basically, please don't sue us or please don't sue the good folks at Jitasa. This is good information and it's thorough, but it can't be comprehensive because that would literally take months. And I'm sure you don't want to watch a month-long video. So if you want to guarantee that you're taking what you learned today and that you're applying it to your unique circumstances, please be sure to engage a professional. So before we dig in, and before we talk about financial literacy, I want to make sure we're on the same page about what kind of executive director I'm talking about. And that's because there are different kinds of executive directors out there. And I'm making some assumptions here about you based on my 26 years of experience as a nonprofit professional. And in my experience, successful executive directors, they want to be credible and trusted with the board, with staff, with beneficiaries, with their peers. And so that's part of why that they are looking at this financial literacy. They also want to have a big mission impact, right? Not just muddle along and get through day to day, but help as many people as possible. Next, they want to build a sustainable and stable organization. They don't want to just fly by the seat of their pants, and they want to leave a legacy behind that is going to thrive long beyond their tenure. And of course, successful executive directors, they want to attract and retain great people, right? They want to get the best board members, the best staff members, and great donors as well. And if you don't want these sorts of things, then don't worry, you don't need to listen to any more of this presentation. But for the rest of you, why else is financial literacy so important? Well, some of this has to do with your relationship to the board of directors. And you as executive director, you should really participate in all the key financial decisions because almost every important or strategic decision has some kind of relationship with money, right? You also want to earn and retain the board's trust because otherwise they might treat you like a kid. They might make you get approval for even routine expenses or make you have two check signers for things that just don't really justify it. They might be inclined to micromanage you and they might not take you seriously when it comes to money. And I know you want to avoid that, right? And also, the board's going to hold you accountable anyways, right? If there are any financial surprises. And so, all the more reason for you to have that strong financial foundation underneath you so that you can be at the grown-ups table for those financial conversations that the organization has to have on a regular basis. Some of this is also about your relationship to donors and to staff and to beneficiaries and other stakeholders, including the community at large. Because you want trust from your donors, right? How much money would any of us give to somebody if they didn't demonstrate to us that they know how to manage money, right? That's just part of the whole thing. You want trust from your staff, right? Because I don't know about you, but I know it would be hard for me to work for somebody if I didn't trust them to make good financial decisions. I'd be worried about my job security. And you also want to have effective stakeholder communication, right? You want that in good financial times because that way your stakeholders, they're going to be confident that their time and the treasure that they invest in the nonprofit are going to have an impact. But you also want to have that good communication during times of financial difficulty so that people will give generously and with confidence that their gift is going to help restore financial health. And this is also important because it's just generally good leadership skills, right? It's hard to manage risk if you're not in touch with the finances, right? And also, it is just really good basic leadership skills, right? The organization's financial health is in your hands as the executive director. And even though the buck technically stops with the board of directors, you're the person responsible with day to day management. And we also need to ask ourselves, if we don't engage with the finances as the executive director, who will? Because somebody more than likely will try to fill that void, but it might not be the person you want to fill the void. And while that person might say that they support the mission, they might also have some bigger priorities, right? And so I really want to encourage you to not abdicate your power as executive director. In every group of executive directors, at least one is going to have a story about a treasurer or a financial staffer who kind of went overboard, right? And that person did not have a healthy relationship with money. And they did not have a healthy, balanced sense of risk. They were too risk averse. They were too afraid that something could go wrong. And there's healthy levels of kind of risk, and then there are unhealthy ways of managing risk, right? We want the healthy. Also, in those people, the ones who kind of try to fill the void, right, can all too often they can make it difficult and sometimes impossible to actually spend money. And when that happens, your mission impact is severely limited and you just have a whole lot more headaches just trying to get the day-to-day done. And I'm not kidding about this. I've seen it before, more than one occasion, in fact. And I've heard too many of these horror stories of the well-intentioned numbers person who ends up becoming the only voice in the organization on financial matters. And very often, that person ends up behaving kind of like a dragon who's hoarding gold under a mountain. And I'm going to bet that your nonprofit's mission is not to hoard gold under a mountain. If it is, I want to talk to you. That would be really interesting. But for the rest of us, that's not our mission, right? That's not what we're supposed to be doing. So I have a handful of pro tips for you because this might seem like a whole lot, especially if you've never visualized yourself having responsibility for your organization's financial leadership. And you might be worried about whether you can pull this off. And maybe math and numbers were never your strong suit. Don't worry. You can be a great leader and you can be a great executive director, even if you never ever become a numbers wizard. And you can also be a really great and effective leader without being a CPA. And you can be a high impact leader without getting into the nitty gritty or without knowing off the top of your head, oh, yeah, we spent this much money on pencils in March of last year. That's not your job, and that's not data that is critical to the mission usually. But you do need to be able to know enough to do certain things, right? You need to be able to ask good questions, right? You need to be able to see the big picture. You need to be able to connect the dots and help other people connect the dots between finances and programming and fundraising, right? You need to be there with those insights and with the view that only you as the executive director have of the whole organization to help other people see the stuff that they might not without you pointing it out. You also, as a part of your job, you're going to be hiring and supervising and sometimes firing your finance and accounting staff. That's just comes with the territory. And so you need to understand enough to be able to handle that part of the role, right? And you also need to be able to set expectations of those finance and accounting staff, right? They need to know what kind of financial reports you expect and what kind of analysis you're expecting to see, right? And it shouldn't just be the standard reports out of QuickBooks, right? You definitely need the standard reports out of QuickBooks. And hopefully you have somebody like the good folks at Jitasa helping you to get the data plugged in into the right places and generating those reports. Those are critical ingredients, but they are not enough by themselves. Also, when you're setting expectations for those financial and accounting staff, helping them know what key measures of financial health you and the board and other leaders in the organization need to be able to see easily, right? And by seeing it easily, I don't mean you have to comb through 8 pages of a balance sheet. I mean, there should be a graphic financial dashboard so they can quickly see all of your key measures of financial health. So you can see at a glance, are we in a good place, or are there certain things that we need to keep an eye on, right? And so that leads me in my experience that really to look for somebody who is going to, when it comes time to get the financial analysis in front of the management team, in front of the board, look for somebody who can explain all that like a fifth grade math teacher would do. Not that they're going to be presenting to fifth graders, but that a fifth grade math teacher or somebody like that, they're going to be really welcoming, right? They're going to be engaging and they're going to speak in a language that is very clear for their audience. So, what's the bottom line here? You, as the executive director, you need to be engaged with finances. But also, remember, you can do this. You can provide financial leadership in your organization without being a CPA. Depending on where you are in your learning, you might benefit from some training or support along the way. But don't let anybody tell you that you can't do this and that you can't learn to do this well. And that's what I got for you today. Again, I'm Sean Hale, and if you have any questions, if you disagree with me, whatever it is, I'd love to hear from you. So there's my email and our website on the screen. Thank you.
Awesome, Sean. Yeah, lots of great information in there. Just had a couple questions that came up. First one here, how transparent should organizations be with donors about their financial challenges?
Well, certainly you want to be, number one, you never want anybody to ever come back and say that they were misled, right? Because that is going to burn a bridge with donors, and very more than likely they might say things in the community about that. And so you absolutely, your reputation is important. But at the same time, if things are kind of rocky, kind of weird, you want to be careful, right? And don't want to paint an inaccurate picture. A lot's gonna depend on the specific circumstances of what the organization's going on with, right? You don't want to unnecessarily put dirty laundry out there, but you also don't want to have anybody ever say that you pulled the wool over their eyes. And so that's a fine line. But all other things being equal, if somebody asks, like, you know, how are you performing this year? How are you, how do you think it's going to go next year? To be honest with them, all other things being equal.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. Second one here, what key financial indicators should organizations review regularly to measure their stability?
So it's going to be different for each organization, right? An organization that has $1 billion in their endowment might not need to worry every month about cash flow. That might, but a lot of organizations, cash flow projections are going to be really important. Also, just kind of one of my favorite measures for most small and mid-sized nonprofits is going to be how many months of cash on hand do you have? Because that's a really great way to really quickly get a sense of are we potentially in financial jeopardy, right? And if you have 3 months of cash on hand and you're not coming up on like the season in the year where there's a giant dip in revenue, then all right, we don't need to necessarily worry about that right now. But there can be other measures also depending on the organization. If you're an organization that does a lot of fee for service, right? Like you might be a veterinary clinic or a health clinic, and so your people are paying you money for services. And if your accounts receivable is getting bigger and bigger, and accounts receivable is just fancy terms for money that people owe us. And if that's going up and up and up every month, then that could be a sign that something's going wrong. And so that's something I like to keep an eye on just so that, gosh, accounts receivable, right? Money people owe us is going up, up, up. Is there a problem in collections? Or has something changed in people's ability to pay? That's something to dig into and to understand.
Gotcha. Yeah. And last one here, you talk a lot about financial literacy. Do you have any tips on where leaders can go to get training on this topic?
Oh, definitely. So I regularly teach courses on this, but regardless of whether or not you look at a course that I teach or find somebody else, please, 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 as you're kind of evaluating whether or not this trainer is right for me, look carefully at, do they have strong nonprofit experience? Do they have experience with nonprofits the size of my organization? And also, and this is kind of the most important part, is this person going to be able to explain this in a vocabulary that I am going to be able to understand? Most of the trainings out there that I have seen, they're put on by CPAs who think that they're talking to a room full of CPAs. And if you're an executive director, that's not the training that you need. That's not going to be helpful to have people talk debits and credits and accrual and things like that at you. Not that those would be bad things to know about, but I would say that's not the fundamental knowledge that you need to get. And the knowledge that you do need needs to be presented in a way that is going to make sense to you, kind of meets you where you are in terms of you learning about those things, and it's going to be relevant to you. As an executive director, debits and credits will probably never be relevant to you unless you are like a nonprofit whose mission is related to accounting. But
Gotcha.
there are other fundamentals that are absolutely important. And so be sure to filter for, is this person going to deliver that kind of thing to me? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So sort of like you're talking about the fifth grade math teacher.
I've, a colleague of mine threw that out there a few years ago, and the more I've thought about it, the more I thought, gosh, she was so right about that. Like if you want a treasurer, find a fifth grade math teacher. They're probably going to do an awesome job, and they're definitely not going to talk to you about debits and credits. They're
Yeah.
probably going to try to do what they try and do in the classroom every day. All right, how do I get these people excited to learn something? And what do I need them to learn? And so they're already good at it. And that's just a very different job description from the average CPA. In the world, we absolutely need CPAs. They're great and wonderful people, but they have a lot of practice doing very different kinds of functions. And so for the treasurer, that's why I love having like a fifth grade math teacher.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah, I think that was all the questions that came up, Sean. But yeah, appreciate you and nonprofit CFOs coming on, and hope to have you on again in the future.
Well, thank you, Alex, and big thanks to Jitasa also for helping to spread the word about these important things that nonprofit leaders need to know.
Thanks for watching. We hope you learned some valuable information on financial literacy and its importance. If you had a question for Sean that didn't get answered, or would like to chat about his services, feel free to email or visit his website at the address on the screen. Thanks again, and we will see you next time.